What's up, everybody? It's Frank again, doing one last video for the Design a Comic Book learning path on lynda.com. Again, you can find Lynda on the library website, library.nashville.org. There you can log on to Lynda using your library card number and your PIN. This final course, called Digital Inking and Refinement, is mostly technical instruction about setting all this up in Photoshop. So I skipped down to section 4, where it gets into the actual visual details of what you can do if, like me, you're following along using pencil and paper. And in the video initial line work, he talks about going over this rough layer that we have in pencils. He talks about choosing the right lines to go over with ink. So not committing to all of the lines that you made with pencil, but figuring out which ones you want to keep in your final page. And then he emphasizes here that you need to start out with thin lines only, because you can always thicken them up later, which brings us to the next video, line weight, where he talks about thickening up the lines that are closest to us in order to make the figures in the foreground pop out. And you can see through his example, and also in mine here, where thickening up some of the lines in the foreground really makes that space more believable. Then he talks about, in the next video, positive and negative space, using value to create space, and emphasizing the most important information in the frame, which would be usually in the foreground. So he's creating some darker values in the background to kind of have this illusion of lighting in the foreground. He then talks about halos and highlights, adding a halo or thin white line to make a subject stand out from a dark background. I do this some. I don't use as much value variation, as much gray as he does. But on the frames where I make the background black, I do a little halo like he teaches how to do. In the last video, he talks about a blur effect, which is a pretty cool effect on Photoshop to establish camera-like focus by blurring out a subject in space. However, we're not using Photoshop, so it's not very relevant to what we're doing. And then in the last section, there's a video about inking on top of a pencil rough, digital inking, where he used real pencils and then worked with the scan in Photoshop. And all of the Photoshop stuff is pretty informative and really valuable if you have access to that. So I would encourage you to watch the whole thing if you're looking to do some of this on the computer. However, just as that fourth section would be most important in doing a traditional style. And here is my finished product. I do some of the things he talks about, such as darkening up lines in the foreground, and I use some halos, and yeah, that's it.
Here we have a pair of jeans that have some holes in the pockets, and this is from wearing like a wallet in the back pocket or using your phone a lot, like keeping it in the same spot. It will get just wear, or you might even see like a shape of the item that you wear pretty consistently. So there are a few little holes here, the stitching's coming out, and then we see this little hole here. Now this side piece, we can fix this with a machine really quickly. This here we're gonna need to do by hand. And that is because we want to use this pocket And that's okay, because I'll do it while I'm watching TV or I'm video chatting with someone. It's kind of like doodling. You don't really need to be doing anything like really beautiful. It's fun, and it can really add some personality. So I have made a patch from a scrap of denim that I have, and I am basically going to be laying it on top, and I just cut a little bit at a time all the way around and making it just the right size. So you wanna cut a little bit, check it, cut it again, because you want this to be bigger than the holes. Now, I didn't do multiple pieces because that's just gonna be a little bit harder to manage on the inside, because we're gonna have to pin this from the outside. And by that, I mean we're sliding this piece of fabric inside. We're gonna lay it flat as we can, and you can only really do it by feeling. It's hard to see. And then we're gonna be pinning it. And it doesn't need to be perfect. This is really just to like get an idea of where it is, and you can take this out and move it if you need to. Often the hardest part is keeping the patch in place when you're mending. So taking the time to pin it really makes a difference. You can use safety pins as well if you need to. You might poke yourself less. And next, I'm gonna find some really cool thread that I wanna add. We're gonna do like a few holes, and we're gonna redo this top stitching. A note about patches. So as you see here, I have two different patches of the same material. These I use scraps of denim that I just keep, and this one that I'm using for this project, it's cut with a little zigzag pattern, and that was done with a pair of pinking shears, like the color pink. This does a little serrated edge, and it helps the fabric from fraying really quickly. And it may happen in the wash and over time, but it's going to be a lot less messy than if you just cut it with a straight edge. Now this one I searched, and that is just an overlocking machine. This is really common, like a t-shirt you might be wearing is probably made with an overlock machine. And by that, I just mean it's cutting, it's sewing at the same time, and it's keeping the edges from rolling. Not everybody has these machines. If you do have them, that's great. We do have one at Studio NPL, but it's not common for everyone to own one of these. And that is why the pinking shears are pretty awesome, because they last a really long time and they don't cost very much. So keep that in mind. have the finished mending for these jeans. So we added a patch inside this, and we can trim this later. We can trim it a little bit closer to the stitches if we want to. And we have our hand stitches, we've got some zigzag stitches, and these are just a few of the methods you can use to mend things. Keep in mind, this is all about patience and choosing your own adventures. So taking the time to do this can really make a difference in your wardrobe, and it'll give your clothes some personality that no one else will have on theirs. Keep that in mind. So next I'll have a few ideas of what I've done in the past in terms of repairs and mending that can hopefully get your imagination going. And be creative, have fun with it. Thanks, y'all.
Hi, welcome to Studio NPL. Today we're going to talk about animation. And this is a really cool animation app. It's called Flip-a-Clip. It's free and it's super easy. Just hit the plus button to get started. We're going to name our project, and I'm going to name it Ball. Make sure onion skinning is on. Then just start drawing. And we're going to draw a ball. Hit the plus button at the bottom to add your next frame. And you'll see when I add the next frame that the onion skin is still there, so you can see where your last drawing was. The further apart, the faster the action. What we're doing here is squash and stretch. It shows weight and velocity. So the ball went all the way down, it hit the ground, and then we're going to start back up. This is a very simple animation. This app offers lots of other features like layers. You can add color, sound, you can add music, even cartoon sound effects. And you can also add video frames. If you import a video, you could trace it and turn it into an animation. It's pretty awesome. Here, the ball hit the wall and exploded. You'll notice when I redraw it each time, it goes further and further out. And now we're going to show that after the ball exploded, it glides down the wall. So now the drawings will start to head down towards the floor. Remember, the further apart, the faster the action. So the ball was bouncing faster than it is gliding down the wall. So these drawings are going to be closer together than the circles we were drawing earlier. When you get to the end, you're going to continue to trace the last frame several times because you want a moment for your eyes to pause on the final movement. You will end up looping this animation, so holding those frames at the end will really help before it starts over again. And that's it. It's pretty simple. I hope you have fun with your own animations. If you give it a try, upload them and hashtag Studio NPL. And here's an example of adding a video and turning it into an animation. I look forward to seeing all your creative animations.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm your Studio NPL photography mentor, and today we're going to do something fun with macro photography. This is called oil and water photography, and we're going to use a macro lens, and it's going to be a great opportunity to make some really cool images. So I'm actually going to use my cell phone today. You could use your camera with a macro lens, or you could use your cell phone and just add a macro lens to it. This is a macro lens I have on my phone. There's several different types of little lenses you can get for your cell phone. So if you have one of those, this will be a great chance to use it. So to do the oil and water photography, you're going to need just a couple things. A glass bowl, you're going to need some water. I'm going to use coconut oil today, and the reason why is because you're going to have to melt it, and it slowly starts to get solid again while you're doing your pictures, and it can do a really neat variety of images. So that's kind of fun to let that do what it does while you're taking pictures. You're also going to need some different types of fabric. So if you have some scarves, a great chance to pull them out. If you have just some fabric laying around, I'm going to use, for this demonstration, I have a scarf here from a Jane Austen novel. So I'm actually going to do it with some words today. So that'll be a lot of fun. So we're going to kick off. What I'm going to have to do is melt the coconut oil. So I'm going to run to the microwave behind me and melt just about 1/4 cup. It doesn't really matter how much. It's just that once you put the oil in, you can't take it out. So start off with a little amount and add to more. The first thing you will need to do is put the water in. Again, this does not matter how much, however much water you want. So you just kind of pour it in, then you're gonna be adding the oil, but I'm gonna go heat the oil up. Remember, it does solidify pretty quickly, so you wanna make sure you're ready to shoot before you melt your oil and add it. Okay, so I've set up our bowl here. I have the water in it. I'm using the scarf with the words, and then I have melted my coconut oil. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour this in. I do have a spoon as well to kind of mix it. So we're gonna pour it in, and then you can see pretty much a giant bubble right there. And then I'm gonna kind of just go like this. Remember, you can always add more, but you can't take it out after you put it in. So just kind of keep that in mind. So I have my camera now, and I'm gonna go up close. You wanna make sure you don't drop your phone in the water and oil, so keep that in mind, be very aware of that. You're gonna need to get pretty close to get the macro shot. And these bubbles are moving around, so I'm gonna try to get the bubble when it gets into a word, just because I'm using the word scarf today. And I have some bubbles that are large bubbles with small bubbles all around them. That is a great one to get a whole bunch of letters all mixed in there. And if you need to mix it back up, you can. Remember, being the coconut oil, it is going to start to solidify on us. So you want to try to get as many shots before it starts to change as possible. The really cool thing, if you're using a scarf with lots of color and energy in it, you'll be able to get the reflection of those in your pictures, in these bubbles. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind, this particular bowl that I'm using, right in the middle of it, has the name of the bowl right across. So I don't want that in my picture. And then there's a line of words on this side too. So I don't want those in my photographs. So you kind of want to always be aware of where the bubbles are when you're taking these pictures. And you're trying to get whatever exciting image you can find. This is kind of cool to do outside too. You can use the sunlight to get some extra reflections in there if you'd like, or you can also light it. I'm just using the kitchen lighting right now. And if you can tell right here, it's starting to get some scratchy lines. And what that is the oil is going solid on us again. But that can actually add a really cool effect to your image, especially if you can get it to go over like a special word that you're trying to communicate in your design. And remember, you want to get nice and close because that's what the macro lens does. You can also zoom in. See how I zoomed in here with my camera? That gets some really cool. You can do that in post too, remember? If you're like, oh, I didn't thought about that and I already took half of my pictures, then you can just do that in post. I really like the letters reflecting in these bubbles. But I've done it with all different types of designs before, and I'll show you some of those pictures so you can see how it would look with just colorful scarves and fabric. So I hope you'll take a moment and just kind of play around with this. If you do make some images this way, please go ahead and upload them, and you can tag Studio NPL because I'd love to see what you're doing with your macro photography. And we'll have some more workshops in the future right here on Studio NPL.
Hey guys, it's Jessie and it's time for your weekly book chat. This week I'm doing feel-good, romance-esque, queer graphic novels. So let's dive right in. The first one is so good, so unexpected, and wonderful. It's a historical fiction Western. I know, like, right, I would not normally go there, but yes, for this book. It's called Stage Dreams, right here. It is great. It is about a transgendered woman who goes to the West and is escaping some things, and there's love and adventure, and there's like this really heartwarming moment, and you're like, oh, yay, and it just feels good when you're done reading it, okay? And it's got some really great historical documentation at the end that Melanie used to write the book. They did an amazing job with this book. Just a fun, fast read that makes you really appreciate our history as a society. We have horrible things going on, but we also have some really cool things going on too. So check that one out, so good. Next up, Pumpkin Heads. You guys, this one is so much fun. Super cute. We've got an adventure, best friends, off seeking romance, but of course there are twists and turns everywhere you go. This is a perfect fall book as well. It takes place at a fall pumpkin festival. And it's just so much fun. Lots of food and snacks involved in it, which is, I think, why it's on my mind right now, because I love all the sweets. So this is by Rainbow Rowell. So if you know her, you know this is just like one of those feel-good moments. You're gonna love this one. Go ahead and check it out. Next is You Brought Me the Ocean. Guys, this one is in the DC universe, and it's bananas interesting, okay? It's in New Mexico, and you've got twists and turns, and you don't really realize that you're in the DC universe for a while because you're not bombarded by Superman and Batman and like all the superheroes. But then Superman flies over at one point, and you're like, oh yeah, we're in DC. And then superpowers come. It's a wonderful little gay love story. You just gotta love it. Next, Laura Dean keeps breaking up with me. Oh, you guys, I think everyone has had, and if you haven't, you're either like way more evolved than a lot of us, or you just haven't had it yet. That toxic relationship that just doesn't end, right? Like you just keep breaking up, but you love each other, but you don't because you don't really understand how toxic this is. And you just keep getting back together. Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me is awesome. It's got all of your high school, like, what have I done? Oh crap. And, oh, but I feel good about this. And, oh, maybe they'll get together. And what is happening here? It's just so good on so many levels. And as someone who has lived through the relationship that is featured in this book, I can tell you, it hits home hard. So check these 4 out. And I picked these 4 specifically because not only are they queer, feel-good romance graphics, you can get all of these right now. Only one of them, Laura Dean, has a hold line. And that only has 1 person on it as of the creation of this video. So you can get all these books today. Yay! Go get them. They're so good. And I'll see you next week.